Safe drug consumption rooms. What is a safe drug consumption room? Well, apparently, I'm going to spitball here, so this isn't based on data research. I'll probably get everything wrong, I usually do. So apparently Scotland has the worst rate of drug deaths of any country in Europe. When I looked into that, apparently the Scottish government count the data differently from other countries. So that anomaly could be explained. Or we could have the worst drug death in Europe. It's a horrible statistic, isn't it? A horrible crime, a horrible title to have won. So, if Scotland has the worst drug death statistics in Europe, what's happened is the Scottish government have opened up a thing called a safe drug consumption unit or room or whatever. It enables addicts to go to a facility run by the NHS, I believe, test their drugs, and I think the main drug that's causing issues in Scotland is heroin because it's lethal. Oh, hang on a second.
Yeah, great.
Get Radio 4 off. Because of its lethality. The problem with heroin is the difference. It slows your heart down when you take it. It's a remarkable painkiller, one of the most useful painkillers on the planet. They use it in the military, have it for trauma victims. If you step foot on a landmine and blow your leg off, generally what they do is put a tourniquet in your leg to stop the bleeding. Then they give you Diamorphine, which slows your heart rate down, and it works as a painkiller, and that allows people to move folk off battlefields. The fact that it slows your heart rate down means that you're going to bleed less, which if you're having a trauma like that, it's a good thing until you can get medical treatment. However, if you are a street heroin user and you take too much heroin, or you don't take heroin and you take an overload, not only does it slow your heart down, but it can stop your heart. So Houston, we've got a major problem right there, haven't we? So where was I going with this? The Scottish Government have opened a safe drug consumption room. It allows addicts to check their drugs and inject with clean needles and in a clean environment where there's health professionals and practitioners about. Now, the cost of this to the Scottish taxpayer is £2 million. I'm making a video and I've not got 2 bob in my pocket, never mind £2 million. So it sounds like an astonishing amount of money, doesn't it? However, I'm going to throw in a geopolitical angle, as I sometimes do. The UK government sent 200 Storm Shadow cruise missiles to the Ukrainian military to kill Russians, or to kill the Russian military. Each Storm Shadow missile costs £2 million. So for the price of one Storm Shadow missile, we've managed to get a safe drug consumption room. Now, there's ethics behind all this, isn't there? I'm quite libertarian in my outlook. I don't need governments to do much for me, and I don't want much of governments in return. So where am I going with this? If you develop a bad problem with heroin, there's a bit of me that thinks, you see the adverts inside a cigarette package, you know, it's all diseased lungs, and it tells you about the horrific diseases that smoking can cause. People still smoke, don't they? I don't need people to tell me that taking heroin really fucking stupid, right? I'll tell you why, because I'm nearly 60. and I lived through the real heroin epidemic, which was in Glasgow in the 80s and 90s. You've seen all these emaciated people standing in street corners, women selling their wares because of their heroin addiction. It wasn't a good look. Their eyes were sunken into their skulls. Their eyes were black. They obviously weren't eating properly. They obviously weren't eating properly, and heroin addicts are fine when they're full of heroin. The moment they want to get heroin, you've got a bloody problem in your hands. They'll steal stuff, they'll break into your house, they'll do nasty stuff to get the money together to buy, shall we call it smack, skag, kit, all the other names that go with it. So in the late 80s and early 90s, Glasgow was awash with this stuff. It was everywhere. So are safe drug consumption rooms a good thing or a bad thing? Nobody knows. The only way we will find out whether this works is to crunch data over the next few years. And crunch that over the next few years, then compare statistics further down the road, isn't it? We can't have this place open and say whether it's a good or a bad thing. Are there better things to spend £2 million on? I would say so, homelessness and all the rest of it. However, if it cuts the bill to the NHS, if it cuts policing, if it cuts prison times, if going to a facility run by the NHS means that addicts then have the ability to talk to counsellors who could perhaps get them into detoxification programs and all this type of stuff, that's got to be better than emaciated junkies dying in cold flats in the more deprived areas of the city, hasn't it? So I don't know where I stand with it. Apart from saying, give it 5 years, give it 10 years. I don't know what the statistics are in heroin. When I was younger, I lived in Denniston, and I worked just round the corner a lot in the Barrowland Ballroom. As an adult, Bill's Tool Store, which is just over there, fabulous place. I'm in there every day or every other day. This area of the city, I regularly see prostitutes plying their trade. I don't agree with prostitution either. I wouldn't want my sister, my mother, my daughter, my missus doing it. But it's a similar thing, isn't it? You're not getting rid of it. Surely it's better to offer the women protection and some kind of safety network so that if they want to get out it, there's ways of doing that. However, I do know a couple of sex workers who are doing quite well out it and do not seem to be phased, and they're okay with it, and they don't have some evil man behind them pushing them into doing that line of work. I'm sure there are other women who are in such a terrible condition that they are forced to do it. So safe consumption rooms, let's take our foot off the gas. I've seen a lot of hoo-ha on Twitter about it. Let's take our foot off the gas and wait a few years to see if it's a positive or negative benefit. I believe I'm not going to show you where it is, but we're sitting very, very close to it. In the time I've filmed this, we're not seeing streams of junkies bouncing in and out of the place. So I can't imagine demand's too high for it. Now, to finish this up, I don't know if anybody knows about it, but during the Victorian times, the British government flooded China with Indian and Afghani opium, and they absolutely annihilated Chinese society, culture. They fought wars over it. It was called the Opium Wars. If I get time, I'll stick links down into the description. So possibly the biggest opium dealer in history was Queen Victoria. During the Contra Rebel scam in America, it turns out the biggest suppliers and movers of cocaine on the planet were the American Central Intelligence Agency. They were getting cocaine, selling it, and using the money to buy weapons for military groups in South America. Did I make that up? No, it's actually true. Do a bit of research on it. And the next thing I will say is why did why was Glasgow awash with cheap Afghani heroin in the 1980s and the 1990s? Get your tinfoil hats out, give them a wee clean up, give them a polish, make sure they don't beam the waves into your head and all this type of thing. I'm fairly convinced the UK's economy was done in. I could speak all day about this. There were between 3 and 6 million people unemployed in the UK. Those people should have rose up and overthrown their government, weren't they? The reason Glasgow was it was a backwater. The two countries in the Western Hemisphere that have suffered the worst from deindustrialisation were Detroit in America and Glasgow in Scotland. In the 1980s and 90s, it hit ahead. All our heavy engineering disappeared, our shipbuilding disappeared. There were between 3 and 6 million people unemployed who should have overthrown the government. Here's the punchline I'm going to throw in for the conspiratorially minded among you. The British government were trying to destabilise and break the Soviet Union. So they backed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and supplied them with weapons to fight the Soviet Union at the time. Now, if you put 2 and 2 together, 2 plus 2, anybody that's got business in Afghanistan, the main reason they want to do business in Afghanistan is to control the world's opium market. The British government were in Afghanistan. There were 6 million people unemployed. Then suddenly the streets are awash with cheap Afghanistan heroin. Can you see where I'm going with this? They already knew from the Chinese opium wars that if you flood a country with opium or heroin, the only thing a junkie thinks about when they get out their bed in the morning is where they're getting more heroin. So I'm going to say the quantities that were coming in, it's more than probable that the British government were behind it. What did you say, Zambo? I'm absolutely convinced Margaret Thatcher's government flooded the UK with heroin in the late 80s and the late 90s. If you wake up in the morning and the one desire you've got in your head is to get more heroin, you're not overthrowing government, sorry. The British government already had a previous in doing this. So they knew how effective it was from the Victorian period and the opium wars. Next one, have I ever taken heroin? I've never taken heroin. I've been given heroin. A few years ago, I ended up in a hospital. I've never been in hospital before in my life. I suffer from good health. I felt as if I'd been stabbed in my back. It turned out I had a kidney stone. I've never felt pain like it in my entire life. So I was taking lots of ibuprofen, ended up in hospital, fell asleep in the hospital, 2 o'clock in the morning. I bounced out of bed. I don't actually swear that much in real life, but I'm now in some kind of gown in the hospital, screaming and bawling at the top of my voice, swearing like a trooper. A nurse came over and she's seen the medical thing, and I was obviously in a lot of pain. She says, I can give you something orally, anally, or an injection. Now, this is possibly a good thing for me since I've been a kid. I've always hated needles. So, even at the dentist, if I can take a film without taking an injection, I'll do it. So that's the idea of a nurse doing something anally. We could get a joke out of that, but we're not, because this is quite a serious thing. So I then said to the nurse, which one works quickest? And she said, the injection. So she bent me over, injected something into my backside. Within 10 minutes of the injection, I was having a peaceful, blissful sleep. So I went from being in the most pain I've ever experienced in my life to feeling as if I had just fallen into velvety chocolate and had a great sleep. I woke up, and I think over the course of the night, thankfully the kidney stone had moved. I didn't need anything else. When I spoke to the nurse the next morning, I asked her what she injected me with, and she said Diamorphine. When I went home and looked it up, that's the chemical or the trade name for heroin's the trade name for diamorphine. So if it has that ability on real physical pain, what does it do to people who are hopeless? You know. So there you go. That's my 2 bobs worth. You've got your Baines the Baker's reviews. We've got geopolitics, vehicle repairs, building recording studios. 2 bobs worth about Glasgow's heroin addiction and all this type of thing, and a good conspiracy theory about Margaret Thatcher flooding the UK with heroin. Alrighty, thanks for watching. Take care, and as I said about the warning in cigarette packets, if you smoke cigarettes, if you're 20-year-old, it's not really going to affect you, are you? But it always catches up. I don't think we need warnings on cigarette packets. It's a dumb thing to do. Taking heroin, I've lost friends. My daughter lost one of her pals from school. She was 25-year-old. She died of a heroin overdose a couple of years ago. And I've lost several mates to heroin abuse. Now somebody's come out the clinic. I'm not going to film him, but he certainly looks as if he's just used the services of the building. So, right, thank you all for watching. A junkie with a dog. There he is. Is that guy a threat to society? Is it worth throwing him in the jail? Is it worth stigmatising him? Should we put our loving arms around him, give him a wee cuddle and hope it gets better? Who knows? Who knows? So let's take my foot off the gas, crunch some data and see how this works out in 4 or 5 years, right? So in the 16 minutes I've sat here, we've seen one person, a happy skag egg with a dog using the facilities, right? Thank you all for watching. Bye.